welcome my fellow panel members. So the format which we'll follow today is that we will have it's a discussion, so there are no presentations. We'll have some leading questions which then the panelists would be welcome to sort of answer. I think, with Dr. Chatterjee on the panel, it is only right that we start off with his vision, because he's been very key member in terms of how CSR has been shaping up in this country. And we are also at a reasonable milestone. It's about 5 years since the Section 135 was introduced, Schedule 7 was created. So a lot of thought had gone into it at that point of time in terms of how the entire CSR journey in this country needs to shape up. And it was a pioneering initiative. It was not a copy and paste model. It was not a regulation which was present in another country which was just being used back in India. So in that sense, it was a pioneering initiative. So I think it would be good to hear from Dr. Chatterjee in terms of what was the vision with which this was set out, and if he looks at the 5 years, how would he what would be his evaluation in terms of the direction in which CSR in this country is moving, both from a direction sense as well as from a quantitative sense. Are we doing enough, and what are the areas where we could do much better?
Right, so it's been a little over 5 years now. We're in the 6th year of implementation of the law, and as Raman rightly said, we can now take stock of what the journey has been like, what was originally envisaged, and what has it been really like, what changes are now perhaps to be conceptualized for the future, and maybe that we can do in the second part of the round. When the law was written between 2011 and 12. It was based on the guidelines for public sector undertakings, which were issued on the 1st of April 2010. So many identify the date on which modern CSR begins in India from that date, 1st April 2010. What we then converted into Section 135 was from the guidelines for the public sector undertaking. For corporate India, obviously guidelines wouldn't do, there needed to be a legislation. And that's why in 2013, the Companies Act, December 2013, was presented to Parliament by Mr. Sachin Pilot. I was sitting in the officers' gallery at the time. And that was the last session before the UPA government shut down. And that was our last window of opportunity to get the Companies Act finally passed. Well, it happened, and then the law became effective from the 1st of April 2014. All that had happened in the world of CSR from time immemorial to that time, across the world, we had looked at most of the models that existed anywhere. We've done our research very carefully. But the Indian law had some features which were completely different, which were completely distinctive, and had not been even thought of or replicated anywhere in the world. But we felt that India was ripe for taking that new bold experiment and taking it forward. What were the 2 or 3 aspects that were completely new? 1. Everything in CSR had to be done in project mode only. If it is not a project, it is not CSR, it is axiomatic. Number 2, there would be 3 partners in the strategic CSR. Government as the enabler and a broad-based regulator, but keeping government as far away as possible. The corporate, who would fund and then naturally supervise and oversee, and the agency which would implement the program at the grassroots level. This was a tripod on which the whole CSR strategy was based. All decisions on CSR would no longer be backroom decisions. We brought of CSR from the backroom to the board. Every single decision of CSR would now be taken by the finest brains in the company. There would be a CSR committee which would be a board level committee. Nothing in CSR would happen without board level approval. And therefore it's an elevation of status. But primarily what we sold the CSR agenda to our members of parliament was this, that it allowed for the first time corporates to participate in the development agenda of the nation. It is a development law. Primarily, fundamentally, it is about India's development. And corporate India could say, we pay our taxes, government should do development, it's not our job to worry about the country, blah, blah, blah. You can say that ad nauseam. It doesn't work anymore. Of course it didn't work. Today, corporates are involved with society, with sustainability, with the planet as much as with profits. And that was then the right time, 2014, when corporates were really understanding the shift from the bottom line for the financials to the bottom line for the planet. And therefore, initially, of course, I have to say that corporates did not take it well. Let's be frank. Many said, we've been doing it for so long, it's in our blood, it's in our veins, it's been also, we've done it our forefathers' time, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we just take a 2% tax and be done with it? Who is this Dr. Chatterjee? It's completely off the rocker, and so on and so forth. Be that as it may, once the law was passed, I have to say to the credit of India Inc., that they converted challenge into opportunity. And the primary thing that I've seen over these 5 years, corporates now do not question the law. In whatever form they had been doing CSR before the Act or not, doesn't matter. But now they have espoused the law, they have embraced the law, and they have built it into the DNA of their companies in a truly important way. Second part is the great transformation that's happened to the NGO sector as a result of the law. A huge host of opportunities have opened up. And this is the third trend that I've seen. Initially, when we were writing the law, we were not sure how corporates and NGOs would gel. They're like East and West, and would the twain ever meet? So we used to call that the trust deficit. And I have seen now over the 5 years, sitting as I do on many fora, that trust deficit is gradually narrowing. And there has been a reach out from both sides. And I call that another Chatterjeeism, is the NGOization of corporates. When corporates have talked to NGOs, they've realized, if not all of it, how far they are removed from the grassroots. And when the satchel wala, the rubber chappal wala gets in touch with the suited booted corporate environment, now corporates listen. Because the implementing agency, the grassroots level, have so much to tell. And in that sense, the NGOization of corporates has begun in terms of the way to start looking at problems on the ground. Similarly, there is the corporatization of NGOs. NGOs have realized that if they want to talk to corporates, they must build their capacities. The financials that corporates require, the impact orientation they want to see, the deliverables that they want to observe, the periodic reporting system that must be put in place, all of that has enabled NGOs to modernize, upgrade, acclimatize, and come closer to the corporate way of looking at the end result. The next important thing is we are now seeing CSR professionals. If I I am the CEO of a company and I want to hire a finance guy, what would I do? Can I find someone with an MBA finance? He or she, good enough, fair enough, interview, I get a person. I want to hire an HR professional. I again go to the MBA school and say, hey, who's done a major in HR? And let's see if he or she fits the bill. If I want to recruit a CSR person, what do I do? What qualifications do I do? What business school do I go to? Nothing. All we have is something in social work or something somewhere. That does this. Over these 5 years though, there's a lot of professionalization in the CSR cadre of people who are working full-time as CSR professionals. With an eye on the fact that in companies now, there's a CSR vertical which allows you to go there and sit on the board of the company as a CSR professional. Huge and humongous opportunity has opened for true professionals who are dedicated to CSR, who specialize in CSR. And now many universities and institutions are actually offering courses in CSR, certificate courses in CSR, and it would be very authentic. I don't want to take too much time in the beginning. I'll just shut down by saying that of late, we're also looking at some changes in the way that the law will operate, how it will operate, we'll take that for the next round of discussions. But these would be my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chatterjee. That was very useful, context setting, including sharing some of the original thinking which went behind the law, and some of the doubts which were there in mind in terms of saying that why CSR needs to be a project. I think we'll sort of come back to it, but I think it's given us a good context and to sort of think about. One of the points which he mentioned was that, to the credit of India Incorporated, that there has been a good adaptation and adoption of the guidelines which was given about 5 years back. And people like Jacob have played an important role in terms of ensuring that the CSR vision of their organizations are implemented. So I would probably invite Jacob to talk a bit in terms of his experience of how the CSR domain has changed over the last maybe 3 to 5 years, and especially the role which Axis Bank Foundation plays in terms of the vision of Axis Bank CSR, and what's the role which the foundation plays in the implementation of this vision, and how this vision has probably helped Axis Bank Foundation focus its activities on where the needs are the highest. Maybe I'll invite Jacob to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Raman. I think almost everything what Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee has talked about, I can resonate with what is happening in my organization. I've been sort of associated with the CSR functions since about 2012. While we always had a foundation before the CSR came in. The CSR rules, when it came in, it helped us to actually get our thoughts much more structured, build a lot of efficiencies around it. Our good intentions were then converted into visible actions. So that is what the CSR bill of 2013 has done. From 2014 onwards. It's 5-year-old. So how I see the way things are now after 5 years is that biggest thing, if I were to tell, from a soft compliance, I think we are moving into a slightly harder compliance. I would say entirely a strict compliance, which is good for the sector, which is good for the corporates as well. And I think the way it was structured, I'm sure it was done with some intent that when it came in, there was a soft compliance that was allowed. We were allowed to, in the initial years, we were allowed to report and not get away with it, explain our thoughts. So some companies may have got away with it, but now I think in the last 2 years, the way it is moving, I think it's moving the right direction. Chatterjee also talked about the importance of CSR committees. I think, as I understand, there are 4 board committees that are mandatory today, and one of that is CSR committee, which is, I think, talking very big about CSR. A lot of companies have, if you see the annual reports, they are not what they were earlier. A lot of companies are doing the reporting. They are focusing on the reporting and devoting a lot of time into the way they present the CSR actor. So that means it is gaining that traction. As long as CSR is in the boardroom discussions, in the corner room discussions, I'm happy to be of an organization where it is. I think India Inc. has to move to that direction where vast majority of the companies make this a true corporate function and not just one more tick in the box. So I think there is some more journey remaining for that to happen. We talked about CSR attracting a lot of talent. Talent both from within the corporates. I am an example of that. I moved in from corporate function to CSR some years back. A lot of you sitting in this room, I know, have done that. That has given CSR, besides efficiency, some more strong intent. When CSR becomes the mainframe function of a corporate, it gets that importance. So that is happening. Besides, a lot of new youngsters coming into this field as a first choice. Few institutions have cropped up where a lot of IIMs earlier in the early 80s, there was one Vijay Mahajan or one or two of them. But now today, each year, we see at least 10 to 15 youngsters taking this up as a first choice profession, which is good for the sector as a whole. Social entrepreneurs are cropping up, because well-meaning social entrepreneurs to support the sector. All these things, collaborations, if I may just touch upon, we can discuss that subsequently. Collaborations are now fructifying in a much better way. Earlier, the collaboration with I have money, I am funding an NGO, that was collaboration, not any longer. Collaboration means that me and Naghma and Raman come together on a table, discuss together and create a project of substance according to our vision, and then collaborate with others in the sector, take it much wider. That is one collaboration. Collaboration with the communities that we work with. Earlier it was, I had something to help you, support you, write a check, help you, that was CSR. But now it is getting more into how communities are getting involved in the CSR bit. And the biggest collaboration, according to me, is government. Stay as far as away from government as Bhaskar rightly put it. Now I think the sector, NGO, the corporate foundations, the corporates are actually trying to work very well with the government. It has moved very well, because I strongly believe that foundations like us cannot move the needle, but government, in spite of all its inefficiencies that we may like to state, can make that serious impact if we work with government. And for the last 4 years, I think if I have focused on any particular area of CSR, it is the collaborations with the government, whether it is the Maharashtra Village Transformation Mission or something that we have cast in Assam and Chhattisgarh, mega projects with government. There's so many. So there we are able to attain scale as well as sustainability, because the kind of work that we are doing in rural livelihoods, unless the communities are linked to the proper government schemes and services, sustainable, we cannot exit. Exit becomes important for us. So exit becomes very important. So linking to government schemes is very, very important. I think I'll leave it at that. Maybe I'll chip in with other conversations later.
Thank you, Jacob. I think that was useful. So one of the major things which you mentioned is that in terms of collaboration, it's collaboration with communities, and the typical word which used to get used, beneficiaries, hopefully getting less and less used, because I think it is really about co-creating what the communities need rather than a top-down prescriptive type of an approach. One of the things which Dr. Chatterjee talked about was collaboration, and Naghma comes from EdelGive Foundation, which has been doing a lot of work in terms of enabling collaboration across entities and also addressing a variety of issues. So I'll also invite Naghma to talk about her experience in the last few years, and especially, if she can focus on the collaboration part in terms of saying that how do you enable collaboration, what conditions help collaboration to function best. That might be a useful conversation from your side.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It is a topic that I'm very, very keen to discuss, no matter how many times we've spoken about it. And because Dr. Chatterjee and Jacob have done such a fine job of highlighting all the good that has come out of the 5 years, I will actually go back to all of this good has come with some serious effort by a diverse set of people. So I'll come really from that lens, and then we can take the discussion forward. Strangely, when 2012 and 13 happened in CSR Act, it came, EdelGive realized that we had almost nothing to adapt to because we were working in the spirit of everything that the Act was saying. We were formed in 2008 by a financial services group, EdelGive, simply to give philanthropy in a structured manner. And at that time, we had thought that let's do everything in a project format because EdelGive understood projects. Also let's put, because EdelGive was a young foundation corporate, we also believe that the younger players in the social sector need to be looked at, new ideas have to be looked at, and so that we learn from a diverse set of experiences, we must invest in a diverse geography, in a diverse set of ideas and understandings. And EdelGive is a diversified financial sector player. So it was simply coming from our position of strength that we started. When 2013 happened, we felt a sense of responsibility. We had 4-5 years of experience. We felt very young, but we understood that we did have a certain amount of advantage having behaved in a certain pattern for the last 4-5 years. And at that time itself, our chairman and Vidya, who's our CEO, had reiterated that whatever our experiences, we will open up to the sector. We will not be having any cost implications for anyone, but we will help give us find good NGOs. We will connect good finance to link with good plans, and we will bring all our learnings to the table. And that's how our effort on collaboration began right from them. We are a Section 8 company. We are focused on education, livelihoods, and empowerment of women, and we work with all kinds of funders who want to find medium and small sized NGOs working across grassroots in the country. Because we find that in the whole quest of finding great projects that are sustainable and scalable and work with the governments, the list of NGOs that one can work with really shortens out because people do not have the bandwidth to have that range of experiences. So where EdelGive comes into the picture is to help, again, these organizations find good partnerships with the governments and funders, support them with good capacity building, so that small and medium can become large and medium. And again, funders can find projects that meet with the vision. Here I will also pause on this line of thought and say that while we all function in project format, which is a must if we want to reach a particular goal, the project cannot be a goal in itself. And the success of a project cannot mean we have succeeded. Because unless this project leads into the long-term vision of what is the need on the grassroots and not what the need is in the boardrooms, we cannot, in the true spirit of the CSR Act and the true spirit of what Dr. Chatterjee has highlighted, really achieve what India needs. So how to map a good project to a great vision, looking at it from the perspective of the final consumer or the beneficiary as we call them, is extremely critical, and that is the lens we would like to push in every forum and in every conversation that we have. And I will rest.
So thanks, Naghma. So there were some useful thoughts there in terms of the collaboration. So just a couple of minutes, from the Tata Trust perspective. The Trust is in a slightly more unique position in the sense that this is an organization which has been created specifically for philanthropies. So we were, so in that sense, we are not, the foundation of the Tata Group implementing the Tata Group CSR agenda, but we are, an independent organization which has obviously got access to resources basis the Tata Group's performance, because Tata Sons, which is where our principal shareholding lies, whatever income comes from Tata Sons to the trust has to be spent in philanthropy. But of course, what the CSR Act, probably enabled for the trust is that if it chose to access, then now it has got an access to a larger set of, financial resources. Because the trust has traditionally been working in a lot of programs, good understanding of communities, work with a variety of NGO partners, reasonably well collaborating with the government. So we have a lot of things which goes towards making projects successful and help achieve the needs of communities. But what this act is probably also enabled is that there is access to larger amount of resources if one wants to get access to that. So in that sense, it has really helped us. And I would also agree with some of the views which has been expressed in terms of saying that corporatization of NGOs, better systems, better practices. In fact, it's probably made even Tata Trust itself, better, because obviously we also, when we need to interact with a wider variety of stakeholders, we also need to learn. So that's something which has been the journey so far. I think I'll go back to Dr. Chatterjee, and one of the key things which he mentioned, two things I thought I would probably pick his brain on. One is he talked about collaboration. Right? So typically collaboration means it is collaboration between equals, because there is always this fear of insecurity of smaller player collaborating with a larger player, and even when equal sizes collaborate, there are variety of issues comes up. Two is in the CSR context, there are specific requirements in terms of reporting, in terms of various other compliances, which also probably hinders collaboration. So it would be useful to have his thoughts on saying that how can we, and also he's written a book which really talks about how the three partners can collaborate. So I think it would be useful to have his thoughts, especially keeping in mind that there could be organizations with limited resources, but when they get to collaborate, they can probably deliver much more. So that was one point which I thought we could sort of have your views on.
Thanks, Raman. Before I get to the point though, let me just flag off 3 or 4 exciting things that are happening in the CSR segment even as we speak. One is that there is now a considerable amount of focus on impact, on outcomes, and how do we measure them. More and more corporates are asking, if we do a project, what's the outcome? What's the impact that you create? And that brings into question 2 or 3 things. One, who measures impact? And I would strongly advocate that the corporate should not do so by itself. Writing your own report card is the surest way to have it. The second thing is, how? What methodology do you use for social impact assessment? A very technical field. We've used SROI in the past, but new tools are developing even as we speak. And the third, just as there is a cadre of CSR professionals, there is now a organization which are specializing in social impact assessment. And at some point, working with the government system, as I do even now, we're trying to build a panel of organizations which have the expertise and the wherewithal to actually tell a corporate that if you've done 10 projects, choose at least 1 or 2 whose real impact we can assess and give you genuine feedback as opposed to slapping your own bags. Another very exciting thing that I've been chairing now in the committee in the BIS is to develop a set of standards for CSR. Across the globe, any new field of knowledge needs standards. If you're doing process, you must have the ISO standards. We are now developing an ISO standard for CSR. And soon companies will be able to get an Indian ISO number, whatever number we finally decide to get. So you can apply to BIS and you can get a certification that you are now BIS certified on CSR. It's a very exciting development. But unlike in the rest of the world, as with most things I've done, I've taken this one step forward and done something that the world has never done before, which is now to allow companies to apply for star rating. When you apply for the ISO standard, you can say, I would like to apply for a 3-star rating. It goes all the way from 1 to 5. And I hope to be able to launch this. It's in the last stage of discussion with Chatterjee, my dear friend, who's secretary wanted to head. We should launch this in the next 2 weeks or so. So if you're a corporate and you want to know where do you stand as a CSR implementer, then you can apply to BIS. There's a committee and we've got certain you apply against that. And you can get a 3-star or a 4-star or a 5-star. What will happen here is those who get a 1-star today or a 2-star can aspirationally rise up the star ladder. Or the CEO can tell the CSR head, you went to BIS, you got a 2-star, man, what the hell? Now next year I want to move to 3-star. Or 2 years down the line, go to 4-star. So aspirationally, there will be this ability for corporates. Initially, we only kept corporates. NGOs won't be able to apply now, but maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, I'll evolve a way to also star rate NGOs. But this will happen in the very near future. It's a very exciting development that's happening. For collaborations, what has generally happened is that there are these things that you talk about, a big partner and a small partner. And sometimes it's generally been seen that a small partner would like to go with a bigger partner because then whatever funds it has, it can put into the kitty and then, work on a project so it benefits the smaller partner. Bigger partners are fought shy of working with smaller partners. They are not in my league, man. They are, why should I do it for you anyway? What's in it for me? The way that conversations go. What's happened, and this is an important takeaway from what Jacob said, government platforms have proved to be a very useful facilitator. Like the one we've spoken about, the Maharashtra village transformation. Subbu is here today, so he speaks something about that. Government has now started creating platforms for corporates to come together and do or complement or supplement government programs, taking a direction from them. But the CSR law, remember this important, does not permit you to put money into government coffers. You cannot, under the legislation, put a single pie into a government fund. So what government is now doing to get around the law is to create foundations, to create Section 8 companies, to create trusts. And it then says, yes, we invite you to deposit money. We will then look at NGOs and other implementing agencies for it. And we will give you a utilization certificate. So that model has happened to begin with in Gujarat, now in Maharashtra, it's spreading to other states. So if you want, many companies, small or big, can actually work with government, but not in government, to complement or supplement whatever agenda they have, and that's one way of facilitating collaboration. Harder compliance, this is important. For 5 years, we didn't issue a single notice for an account. It was only in 2018 that we issued the first set of 846 notices. companies that didn't even go up to SOC compliance. We adopted the principle of comply or explain from the UN system. The idea was if you didn't spend your 2%, you could simply put on your website the reason why you didn't spend or reasons why you didn't. And that was enough. But if you neither spend nor explain, then what? Then those who are doing CSR has a right to ask the government, we're doing it, but those guys who are not, they're just getting away. Now it will be 1,800 odd notices, which are already prepared in the ministry and are being shot out very soon. So a lot of corporates will soon get wake-up calls that now, 5 years down the line, you cannot still say, sorry, I forgot, CSR is not important, why care about society anyway, who bothers? Sorry, that's not going to work. So we are rightly moving from a soft compliance regime to a somewhat harder compliance regime. And in some ways, maybe that's not a bad thing. Last point I'll mention is why did we go for the project mode and what does it mean? Very simply, the project goes from end to end. And that's what we want CSR to happen. And to take it away from what I call another Chatterjeeism, checkbook charity. It's something that's now out of the system. So a project essentially encompasses 4 or 5 things. 1, the establishment of the need, the baseline survey as I call it. You pass through a village in your car and you look out and you say, hey, I don't see a school here. You go back and tell your CSR head, hey, I passed through village X, build a school there, that's our CSR. Not the way to do CSR. If you had stopped your car and talked to the villagers, they might have said, yes, we don't have a school. But how can I send my children to school where I don't have potable water? All our children and all of us are facing disease and malnutrition because we don't have potable water. That's our primary need. Solve that first. So knee-jerk reactions to CSR will stop if the need for what people want is first established. Second, very careful documentation. I've seen this in project after project. People come, best practice. What is that? This is what we did, this is what we did, this is what we did. We flew to the moon and touched the stars and traversed the Milky Way. That's nothing. You first got to establish what it was before you started. You need to do the documentation from day one to know where the baseline was before you went to where you wanted to be. Otherwise, you'll never know that you realized your objective. 3, the allocation of monies. They must be aligned to the need. You can't allocate more money than the need itself was required. Very often we splash money because it's 28th of March and we've got to spend it before the 31st and somebody needs something. So, dump 20 lakhs here, 30 lakhs there, 1 crore here. No, not the way to go. We're in the era of strategic CSR where you need to strategize from day one what you want to deliver by what time. 4, monitoring. The best corporates today, and I sit on CSR committees, is that we have devised very good monitoring systems which are IT-based. The CSR head and the independent director of the CSR on the dot, every 14th day, gets a sheet which has been designed by the company for every project that it is doing. Example, suppose you have in your CSR kitty for that year, not a big amount, let's say 20 crores. 20 crores is how many projects? If I have, as a CSR head of my company, 20 crores of CSR money, average, for a year, how many projects would that be? Any ballpark figure from anywhere? What's the average size of a project?
6 and 10. 6 and 10 projects.
The Tata Trust would be larger.
What is the average size of a project? not from the panel.
10 to 20 lakhs. 10 to 20 lakhs.
So if you have 20 lakh, for every crore there are 5 projects. For 40 crores, how many projects? 200 projects. I challenge any one of you to monitor more than 3 projects at any point of time. You will go insane. Apart from being divorced and separated from your children and all. So let's say that an average CSR budget of somewhere between 30 or 40 crores gives you an insurmountable number of projects to monitor. And if you don't have a very highly sophisticated system of spotting what's going wrong before it goes wrong, these are early signs. Remember, implementation of a project is a damn difficult task. It eats the best of us. And if you don't see what's going to go wrong 6 months down the line, now it will go wrong. That's the familiar principle. What goes wrong will go wrong, right? So that part of the monitoring has to be really sophisticated, state of the art. And last, the assessment, the evaluation, the impact of what you did, what did it leave behind? And in terms of real deliverables, what did you achieve? If that's not there, it's not a project. So broadly speaking, when I said in the law that if it is not a project, it is not CSR, this is what this means. And that's the difference between checkbook charity and strategy. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I think we'll take a few more minutes. Maybe Naghma, I think it will be useful to also hear from you on the point which Dr. Chatterjee had mentioned, which is about impact measurement. And maybe you could share some of your learnings in terms of how that is being measured in the context of EdelGive, especially since your projects are unique and they facilitate collaboration and not easy to measure in that sense. So I think it would be useful to have your insights on that.
So I have certain mixed views about monitoring. I'm a chartered accountant, so I'm not number shy. So let me put it out there. But monitoring and sophisticated impact measurements do cost a lot. And when we're talking about projects in the field with human indicators, some of the most well-guarded projects are susceptible to threats and failures because things happen and derailment is a real thing. But what we found in the context of collaboration, monitoring and evaluation can become reasonable. Because you're saying 5 funders can jointly fund something and maybe we can jointly monitor something. Instead of putting in independent money after independent monitoring of our pieces of projects, which seems to be more of a trend that is followed. So one of the ways in which EdelGive enables collaboration is to say, let's look at the whole mission of this organization. Let's look at what project we all are jointly funding together. And can we look at joint audits, joint impact measurements, and then derive our own impact out of that. So I'll give you an example of one of the successful collaborations we're having where government participation is key. We are deeply involved in an education project with the government of Maharashtra. We have the format of delivery that is there. We have fantastic NGOs in the rural areas of Maharashtra that are functioning with bureaucrats and with the government machinery to enable student learning outcomes. To simply put out this program, the government is an active participant in this dialogue. We are the secretariat. We take the messages from the NGOs to the government, the funders to the government, but we also are the nodal point for today 7 funders. The 7 of us jointly review this project on a state level. The 7 of us sit and monitor this together every year end in one room with all the NGO participants there. What it does is, one, it takes the fear of accountability off. That this is a project that we're jointly involved in. I will also, put in the context of when you said collaboration happens between equals. I think equal is in our mind. We have to understand we are all equals in the work that we bring to the table. the strength of the NGO is in the delivery. The strength of the corporate is in the systems and the money. The strength of the government is in the scale that it is able to amplify. And when we come from our strengths, we all become equal. If we look at ticket sizes, we all have a skewed social structure, even in a room of 4 people. So it is EdelGive's job to balance the strength in the room. Because we are saying the final owners of this project are these NGOs who are delivering. They're completely accountable to us. But we will also jointly hold them accountable so that it becomes reasonable for all, cost efficient for all, and also the fear of failure is taken off the books. Some things happen, some projects do fail, some projects go under the weather for some time. But if you're all sitting and discussing it, again, the worries about it go up because we're seeing complete participation from all stakeholders. So I think when we say collaboration, we have to also move beyond jointly funding a project. We have to involve jointly reviewing, jointly monitoring, and making costs reasonable around it so that the NGO can do what it does best, which is delivering a project instead of making 5 monitoring reports and 6 audit processes. So this is from my experience, this works much better than funding smaller projects oneself and putting the entire burden and cost of monitoring on the NGO, which is a practice that many follow.
Thanks, Naghma. So there was some insight on how the collaborations work. We're running out of time, so we'll probably have one more before we open it up for question answers. So Jacob, when you talked about, you mentioned 2 things. One was about working with social entrepreneurs and also collaboration with communities. Now, I think it would be useful for us to hear some of your experiences working with these, especially with social entrepreneurs, because by nature, any collaboration with an entrepreneur, there is a chance of success and there is a chance of failure. Now, CSR by nature does not allow for failed projects, because you need to report back on the success of the project. So how does that really, hinder innovations in CSR? Have you looked at, things differently? Have you looked at how you work with social entrepreneurs? I think some of that experience would be useful, for us to also hear from you before we throw it open for questions.
I think, Raman, you reserved the most toughest question for the last. Before that, I think Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee has brought out something exciting about the CSR rating. I think it excites me. Coming days, my life would be tougher, but we welcome that. The moment it comes, my CEO is going to tell me that get rated first and then come and talk to me. But that's exciting. I think even for the NGO sector, we need some kind of standardization. A lot of industry body you have been a part of many of them. The development sector needs a platform, a body, instead of disparate discussions in various forums. It actually requires something, and it's only a matter of time, according to me, that in our Raman, you talked about our approach to the communities. Today we work with about 1.5 million households in the rural India. I can confidently say that not a single money of ours goes to them. So what we do is a very structured engagement with them. Capacity building, awareness, linkage to government schemes and others. We enable them to plan. We do, as Dr. Chatterjee was mentioning about the importance of baseline. So around the time that baseline studies are done, we go to the communities and enable them to plan for themselves. Because we are in rural livelihood, the type of agriculture produce that they should look at, the package of practices, etc. These are brought in as a awareness building, capacity building training programs, but very little of the money goes into no money goes to the communities directly. So they take ownership of that. Like in any business, there has to be an equity. We strongly believe that the community also has to contribute to this program in a small way, whatever it is. Even that 10 rupees contributed by that poor farmer gives them that ownership of that project. Otherwise, it will be just a grant that some charity organization is giving, tomorrow somebody else will give me, and things like that. So, and a long-term association with the community. We say that we are, because of the nature of our work, livelihood, the transformation doesn't happen overnight. We say that from day one that we are invested in it long-term. Where another aspect that we focus upon is, if anybody asks me what is the strength of my organization, the foundation, I think it's the partnerships that we have built. We have tried to choose the right kind of partners, invested all our energies in creating those partnerships for the last 10 years. And now today we can confidently say that we have invested sufficient money into their organizational capabilities. They are able to recruit better. They are able to go to the B schools and recruit sometimes. That is because we have given them the flexibility of that, instead of restraining their and getting only into the project mode. So that is one strategy that I would strongly recommend anybody who wants to get into CSR, that you build capacities. The other things will follow. Last thing about entrepreneurs, I think we are too young to have in that space, the entrepreneurship space, to say whether it is success or failure. But yes, today the IITs and IIMs are focusing on that in a very big way. The problem statements have to come from the field.
Yes.
I think it is linkage to those problem statements that will be a measure of success. In isolation, if somebody gets into entrepreneurship, I think it is just, I would not say waste, it may not reach the success. But if it is identified and linked to a problem statement that emerges from the communities, from the sector, then it is easier achieved. We have invested in some kind of entrepreneurship. It is an experiment yet. I don't know whether we will reach that. It will require a couple of years for it to actually measure. So if you ask me if there is anything of a success story yet, not yet.
Okay, thanks. So that uncertainty of that success, whether the CSR structure allows to take up that uncertainty or not, I think is a question which is still open for discussion.
I think Raman, you should talk about Tata Trust is the bigger. We work with many organizations which have come out of that social entrepreneurship, and we are working with them. I think a lot of people should aspire to do even half or 1/10 of what Tata Trust has been able to do in the last 100+ years. I think right from the day one they were focusing on that entrepreneurship. Many organizations have incubated with that entrepreneurship as a theme.
Yeah, so I would do that, but I think I should also open it up for questions and views. So if there are relevant points which comes up, I will chip in. So I would encourage questions. If there are also views or comments, please feel free to place that also on the table. I will just open it up. Yeah.
Hi everyone, good morning. It's lovely to see this panel. We hear Dr. Chatterjee and everyone else here talk quite often at forums. Loving the diversity here today. Thanks to Banti as well as Vandana for having us and everyone here. Diversity both in terms of gender and experiences, I think. Couple of questions. I have 5 and maybe across the panel we can, some of them have been touched upon. 4 actually. So one is the connect to SDGs. Overall, is strategy rethink for CSR really thinking about that? How do we embed that into reporting? Secondly, Dr. Chatterjee talked about standardization. I want to take it to a different level and say that can the social stock exchange or anyone looking at standardization in terms of reporting, templates, log frames, outcomes, impact essentially, to make life easier for the CSR heads as well as the implementation partners, the NGOs. Thirdly, on impact investing. Again, and fourth, on capacity building of NGOs. I know Jacob just talked about it, but moving away from the tangible assets, tangible benefits that a corporate looks like, can someone really talk about capacity building as part of the SDGs and focus on that? And fifth is, again, you talked about the ability to fail. So there should be some amount of tolerance to understand what the drop-off rates would be. For example, if you're skilling 100, then we know that ultimate placement or ultimate continued employment would be around 60-70%. So we should already factor those things in. Thank you. So 5 questions. SDGs, standardization of reporting within the social stock exchange, impact investing, capacity building of NGOs, and the ability to fail. Thank you.
We have somebody here from UNDP, so I thought we might ask her also to talk about SDGs.
Yeah, I think just adding to what Dr. Chatterjee would also add on the SDGs, I think there's a lot of conversation in, just for introduction, my name is Riya Saxena, I'm with the UNDP. I think there's been a lot of conversation internally that we've been doing as well on how can we align the SDGs with different activities, be it with the CSRs, the foundations, or even impact investing organizations. And just to shed a little bit of light, what we've tried to do, and this is slightly different from the CSR domain, something more for more mainstream corporates to adopt, is how you have different standards for green bonds or for frameworks around green finance, etc. It's a fairly defined universe, it's a fairly defined set of standards that are out there. We've been exploring what could these SDG standards look like for corporates to follow as well. And I know Bhaskar, Chatterjee, Dr. Sarojit also talked a lot more about what's happening on the CSR front. But there is a lot of conversation about how can we get different corporates to start reporting what activities have been taken along the SDGs around different themes, standardized format as well. There's a lot of concern about impact washing or SDG washing that does come in the picture. But there are some of these standards that have been developed, and I'm happy to share with the group to further circulate it out there as well. This is still in a draft stage, so comments, any kind of feedback on these is still appreciated. And any feedback on how this could be taken ahead by the corporates and implemented is also something we're looking to pilot as we go ahead.
Just to add on to that, I think the very recent KPMG report on the top 100 companies throws some light on it. I think about 48% of those companies are today aligning their CSR work, linking it to the SDG goals, which is, I think, a good move. It requires a larger coverage. If India were to reach anywhere near the 2030 goals, I think a lot of besides the corporate activity, a lot of CSR also has to be aligned to that. And that is where the collaborations also become more and more important.
Conversations.
Having been with Tata organization for more than 50 years, I'm naturally tempted to ask this question. Up till now, what has been implemented under CSR, is it genuinely coming from the hearts of those corporates, or is it only because it is mandatory? And the background for this question is, the founder of the Tata Empire implemented CSR more than 100 years ago without any compulsion.
Yeah, so I'm Naghma Foundation for Medical Research, so I'm from a community of receivers of CSR rather than a funder. And I have 2 questions. How much of the project design, since you're in the project mode, is left to the implementer, who might also be an innovator or an entrepreneur, than the CSR funder or the other partner government? Okay, that's my first question. And the second question is that if a company, say, is doing 3 or 4 or 10 projects with the CSR funding that it has, can it have the same dashboard for all these projects for monitoring and evaluation, or doesn't they need to be custom made? And the third question, if I may ask, which just struck me, is that what is the period of engagement with a CSR? Yeah, for an organization or a social enterprise?
I have a question, 2 questions actually. My name is Williams and I look after CSR at Asian Paints. So 2 questions. I think both are in the context of collaboration, since a number of speakers on the panel have spoken about it. we hear of more foundations talking about if you want the government to work actively to fulfill their role in the triangle of collaboration, it makes sense to sign memorandums of understanding with them to clearly demarcate what is their role, what is the role of the corporate and the NGO. So probably from the panel, and maybe since there are a lot of practitioners here, I would like to know what's the benefits and the advantages and disadvantages of doing that. That's point one. The second question is more specific probably to what do we, where we work. And a lot of corporates I know work in and around the industrial areas. I also see a lot of duplication of effort and duplication towards the community happening. So if you look at one example of health and hygiene, either you're creating the most healthiest people around your plants, or you're probably creating the weakest people in terms of health and immunity around your plants as well. Is that one role that the government can look at, in a sense, creating a blueprint for a radius around an industrial area and saying that there are various things to be done? Now it's up to the corporates to come and choose what they want to do out of that blueprint. Don't create or recreate or reinvent continuously what each one of you are going to do, and therefore land up just duplicating things and exploiting the whole concept of CSR in and around your plants. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
So maybe we collect the questions and then we could start answering them.
I think just one more set of questions before we
So probably you could answer this question, then you will
There must be time after that for any more.
To get
Our answer is about 14 questions. We'll try and answer some of them, and the rest I'll leave to my colleagues. Possibility of failure. Of course. There is nothing that human beings do that don't account for failure. I've never known a project, despite all the best practices that I see every day, is 100% successful. But generally tell the best practice presenters to start with what they didn't do, or what challenges they faced, and what the outcomes fell short of. It's only then that you can assess a real project. A real project is never 100% successful. So when you plan the project, at the planning stage itself, you should know how much of it is likely not to be achieved, and what would be a good indicator of success. 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 7 out of 10. To assume that you will get 100% in English as you do in CBSE is, of course, a stupidity. So you just have to make way for that. Linkage with SDG. In the high-level committee of the government in which we sat and recently submitted our report, we have said that when I was actually drafting the law way back in 2011, what did I have before me? The Millennium Development Goals. So the SDGs were not even there. Today, there's a big noise being made, and of course, India's record in the MDGs was one of the lowest in the world. It was abysmally bad. And the UN told us that we failed with the MDGs because India failed. So China pulled us up a little bit. But this time, if the SDGs and 2030 are anywhere near success, it has to be India's success, or it will be failure again. So we are now very strongly trying to link the SDGs with CSR. This is the only country in the world, remember, which has a law on which you can leverage spending on sustainability. Companies often come and say, look, if we don't spend on sustainability, nobody's going to issue us a notice. Nobody's holding us accountable. But if we don't spend on CSR, somebody's going to issue us a notice. So the more you link SDGs with CSR activities, and pretty much Schedule 7 takes care of all of it, you have a way to go. On reporting, we started with 100 companies, the BRR system, as you would now recall, business responsibility reporting. SEBI mandated for the 100 companies, and then about 3 years ago, I sat with the chairman of SEBI, and in the next board meeting, we expanded it to 500. We've just moved SEBI again to take it to the top 1,000 companies, which will necessarily report on a series of items connected with both CSR and sustainability. How much of it comes from the heart? Difficult to say. There are corporates and corporates, but I'll tell you only this, and I said that in the opening statement. More and more companies are drawn into understanding that this is both about heart and about business. It's both about strategy and about tactics. It's something that now you can go to the board and say, it's coming from the heart, and the board would say, put that aside, who cares? What are your financials? But today, boards themselves are evolved boards. So it's a mix of your emotion, your involvement, your passion, along with your brand name, your credentials, your success factors. It adds up to a very powerful company. MOUs with governments, please make them. Governments are notorious for backsliding. If you trust governments, from there you're in deep trouble. So please define. Most PPPs have failed, and I've done a lot of PPPs in my life because the roles were not clearly divided. The geographies, the items of work. Please do the minutiae before you start a project with government. Government itself, you can't blame them. They're often not clear as to what they expected you to do. So gradually you will see government reneges on its promises and expects you to do all of it. So be a little bit careful. If you can put an MOU in place, try and do so. And the last point I'll address before I hand over is about duplication. Many of the district magistrates today, very involved young people at the ground level, they are actually starting to map. But remember that government doesn't do anything without an agenda. And don't fall into that trap. You get from the government system the intelligence that you want. But don't let the DM tell you, you know what I want you to do? Build that bridge. You know what I want you to do? Set up this school. You know what you do? It's not the DM's directive that you need to follow. He can tell his Tahsildar that his videos ki ye karo, wo karo. You be very firm. This is what's happening in the district. The way you back it is great. I'm only going to do this. One. And I will never put any money in a DM fund, a commissioner fund, a Sarkari fund. Stay out of that. Because that will go out of your CSR books altogether. It won't be counted as a CSR expenditure. So be very careful, be very choosy about what you do, but of course coordinate with the government, complement, supplement, work actively with them. That's all.
Yes.
I wanted to ask Ashish to respond to the duplication around the plants.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashwini Saxena. I represent Chatterjee Foundation. I think duplication will not emerge if like what Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee said, if the framework. In fact, I'm sorry to say, but when I was listening, I was looking at the whole topic is about from compliance first, 2% compliance, then talking about compliance of impacts, then talking about standards. So I think the entire focus is get more towards compliance. And from compliance to measurements and from measurements to standards, rather than we patting our bags being patted by somebody else. I think a larger framework, which I think the government has done in the previous past also, I think that's where the question of duplication will be taken care of. If we just close our eyes and if we look at which is one thing that we as a country did very successfully despite all odds against us, I think it was the polio drive. The kind of work that all sectors, all parts of our society works together, we were able to eradicate polio together in a place where we are straddled by two countries where still polio exists in a big way. What were the lessons? I think the lessons were that there was a framework, there was a whole strategy behind it, and as I think Naghma said in her discussion, that everybody chipped in where they were core competence. I think we as corporates, if we can have that core competence defined by ourselves, at least the way we in JSW Foundation work, like most good meaning organizations do, we have all our work aligned to SDGs. And not just the SDGs, the 169 targets that have been defined for those SDGs. Mapping them out to see that which one are the ones which we are actually going to touch upon through some of our work. Our contribution would be only maybe 0.0001% of that whole thing, but if that framework is followed by all of us as corporates sitting in this room, and together I think that is where that collation would happen. And you would not need any different standard indicators or any other monitoring and evaluation framework that itself defines. Just to give an example, for us in our education portfolio, the only yardstick that we want to use is that every child in our defined boundaries should be clearing at least a 10th standard examination. And the reason is very simple. It is class 10 which is going to ensure whether the boy or a girl can at least take up a polytechnic or a ITI course. So they would not, being left behind in the unorganized labor market at some point of time. And therefore, for that, whatever needs to be done, whether toilets have to be constructed for girl schools because dropouts are because of hygiene factors and menstruation period, or if the schools are not accessible, then or if the quality of teachers are not there. So looking at that as a target, and that yardstick is very simple. I don't have to measure it. If the children enrolled in all the schools in my communities have cleared their 10th standard examination, the board exam itself is the yardstick. I don't have to go and do any third-party assessment about it. So I think if we can have some kind of a framework where this kind of a duplication, as a core sector company, I think it's good that you gave me this opportunity. We face this constraint every other day. There is some DM fund, there is some new foundation that has been created which needs a certain amount of contribution. It's a daily battle, if I may put it here. But yet again, as he rightly pointed out, Dr. Chatterjee pointed out, it's important for us to hold on and make sure that the framework at least is clear in our minds. What is the role that we can play? What is the role that we expect the government to play? And that only takes care of the lack of duplication. And in our experience, this is how it has worked so far.
Hi, I'll go with my question, please. Thank you, all of you.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Dr. Chatterjee, you seem to be an institution in yourself. Thank you. And Jacob, when you were talking about governments, I represent the National Skill Development Corporation, and Dr. Archana Singh, your hand inadvertently was pointing towards me. I said, oh my God, he knows where I'm coming from. But I have a question in relation to ATG. What is this, connection of ATG with CSR, and what is this fetish that most funding organizations have with the ATG certificate? My question is related to our corporation itself, because most of the funding organizations don't want to give us funds directly because we are incapable of giving them an ATG certificate. So it goes through the NSDF, which is a Government of India entity. So, it's a lot of work and a lot of layers that come into play because of this ATG certificate.
You are registered how?
We are a PPP, sir. Public-private partnership.
See, in the law, I wrote 3 things. That you have to be either a society, 1861 registered society, or a trust under any trust act in any state, or a Section 8 company. I had not envisaged PPPs in that segment. So I can understand why that difficulty is particular in your case. What happens now? There is a foundation also to which the money is then coming to you, or how?
Yeah, so the Ministry of Skill Development routes it to the National Skill Development Fund, and the National Skill Development Fund then gives it to us, and then we become the implementing arm through our training partners.
So the money goes to the fund.
Yeah.
Structurally, that is the correct thing now to do under the law. But we can think of, including organizations such as yours. But I'll have to put it to the Corporate Affairs Ministry. So have you made any petition there yet? Try it. I'll take it up with the NJT and see what can.
Dr. Chatterjee, the last amendment that came up for CSR, where corporates can go through collaborations also. So we are a for-profit social enterprise, which failed initially, but now very successful. But we are now getting public sector organizations, private sector organizations, and MNCs who are giving us money directly for implementing programs under water and sanitation. So there is a lot of change that is going through, purely from an accountability standpoint. We started as a technology company with green technology, but now we are a company which has got technologists, social scientists, data scientists, and we give an entire end-to-end activity from implementation, incidents, implementation, and intervention. Last but not the least, as we all talked about government partnerships, today we are mandated by 7 state governments. We have a very clear agreement with all these people.
And the one which was launched yesterday by Honorable Rural Development Minister in Maharashtra, called as Swachh Maharashtra, where they mandated us 2,200 villages to implement water and sanitation through corporate partnerships, and Honorable CM will be doing the appeal today. So there are a lot of changes and a lot of innovations that are happening in CSR. Do not restrict yourselves to creating, especially foundations, I would request, go ahead and look at implementation partners irrespective of whether they're NGOs or not. And your biggest advantage in sustainability, I've been in this business for the last 10 years, I've traveled over 1,700 villages right now. Your only key to success is partnership with community and partnership with the government. Whatever you're investing, invest into infrastructure, make it a public infrastructure, and every government, every Gram Panchayat today is taking responsibility of managing, operating and maintaining and securing it. These are the kind of agreements that we have been able to come over a period of time, and now we are very clear that government is accountable enough to give the entire infrastructure for intervention, which will be funded by a corporate under CSR and managed by the community who's trained by an implementation partner. So look at least 80% of your funds going towards creating infrastructure, at least in the initial stages. And then comes the soft skills building, skill development. And skill development also only focus on identifying people within the community. So the day before yesterday we got a confirmation from the Social Justice Minister where we say that every village should have 2 Swachh Bandhus and 2 Swachh Bhaginis employed under the Manrega for the first year. And the second year they should be funded under the PMEGP or the Mudra scheme to implement programs which are self-sustaining and self-livelihood. I thought all the questions, maybe there's a little bit of my experience answers some of them, so I thought I'd just share this with you. But please work with the government, that's the only key to success.
Not the only, but it's one of the property.
Yeah, one of the, for me it has been more.
Yeah, so just a quick question here. So I'm from Asian Paints, I'm the CSR group of Asian Paints. So somewhere we are a management group, and that 5% of overheads becomes an important thing for us because we don't have a foundation in place at this point. And the entire question of need assessment, impact assessment, at the same time capacity building of NGOs, whether this falls in core or overheads, it's not very clearly written in the law at this point. And even when we speak with other corporates, that's kind of a grey area because that money is not directly going to the beneficiaries or communities, rather, the better word to be used. So I would want to get a view here in the room that how do we treat that, because at the end of the day it's strengthening your programs.
Yeah, so I have a connected point. I represent CRISIL Foundation and we publish CSR yearbook every year. And as part of that publication, we do some specific survey. We try to understand one particular aspect of the whole CSR, how this space is emerging. So a couple of years back, we actually had done this survey about how corporates recognize these expenses, the accounting and recognition practices. And what I realized is that it's so varied. Everyone has their own way of classifying what these expenses are, whether it's CSR, non-CSR, and we just touched upon some of these best practices in CSR, which could be around impact orientation, which is about stringent monitoring, sophisticated technology to do monitoring, and also the talent. Talent is becoming very expensive now because more and more professionals are coming into this, and if you want to be effective, you want to attract best talent. So all of this actually is not adding up to the whole 5% dilemma. So how, first of all, can there be some very standard practices of recognizing and accounting for what is CSR and what is not CSR? I see that it's all over the place.
CSR and what is not CSR is very clear. 5% is an area of grey. I'm going to tell you what it is, what CSR is and what it is not. That is pretty much clear. What you show in that 5% is the important point. And why is it not clear? Why didn't we make a series of 26 rules to tell you what you can put in your 5%? If you were sitting as a policymaker, you also would not want to do it. Because this 5% is, the idea is to leave the interpretation to you. It's not for us to tell you what you want to do with it. This 5% is known as admin expense. the wording of that 5% is about the company's admin expenses for CSR. What you show against it could be salaries, could be skill upgradation of NGOs, could be time that you spent on on implementing your CSR activities. All of that is in this 5%, but it is not related to the projects. So in a project, there's a human resource cost, there's a travel cost, all the rest of the thing is shunted to the project. The monitoring of the project is in the project. The evaluation is in the project. You will only show what is your direct corporate cost.
I think the word which you coined there is administrative overheads. If you go into the accounting rules and see what does overheads means. Overheads means does not include anything which is directly attributable to the project. As you very rightly pointed out. Administrative overheads
Idea was to make sure that what you charge to a project is the project. That 5% money is not diluted, pushing it into the project at all. It's for you to do what you want to with it.
Mr. Chatterjee,
Dr. Chatterjee.
Can I just? Yeah, sure. I think I've been raising this question on this whole 5% for the last couple of years with you. See, the whole process is that a lot of corporates who are giving funds are interpreting this as 5% overheads which they need to cap for project itself. So what is component?
Let's say 20 projects. What do you do with this 5%? You are implementing, let us say 20 projects. You are a corporate.
Yeah.
You are implementing 20 projects.
Yeah.
How is it related to this 5%?
No, so can I just elaborate where the confusion out in the market is? That what these people incorrectly, I'm not saying all, but a lot of large organizations who are very serious in CSR are interpreting this as they should cap the project back-end cost or 5%. Now where the complication is coming in, and that's why there is a request, is all the big four, and I don't want to name any of them, are actually giving interpretation saying this 5% cap, to the multinationals especially, is also for projects, and they're paying safe.
They should be prosecuted by the Supreme Court. It has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Exactly,
I am the person who wrote it. I'm telling you clearly.
Yes, sir.
You can go and take an advisory from anyone. And Nitish, particularly this side, you should make it very, very clear. Refer it to them.
Yes.
I'm telling them now. For heaven's sake.
So, but
do not confuse because there is no confusion.
Yes, sir. 1 minute. Can we have in your CSR you get a lot of clarifications as Q&A. Can we have this one project? It's not meant for projects. It's meant for.
You will remember that I brought out about 3 sets of FAQs.
Yes.
Shortly after, and maybe now I'll ask the corporate affairs. In fact, I'll draft the reply myself.
Yeah.
And try and give you an FAQ on this.
Thank you.
It's about time we did that. But I'll just tell you as of now what the intention was. People can interpret words very way they want. This administrative overhead is not outside of the building.
Since we are running out of time, I think we will probably do one-on-one, subsequently. I'm sorry. I'll just, request if Jacob and Naghma, any closing comments on any of these points?
Well, I don't. Actually, we don't. Just to reinforce that we don't operate on that 5% for our partners.
Yeah.
So it's if few of them are doing, I think these FAQs should suffice. Other than that, I don't think any closing comments from your side.
So I would agree with Jacob. We also do. So I mean, it can be contested very well. It's not in the spirit of how it was written, and it's up to individuals then to choose to keep that as a clause for a larger goal. But closing comments from mine, because we had come here really to discuss vision and strategy in the context of Indian CSR, and we have spoken a lot on monitoring and accountability of it. I would just urge us all to go back and say monitoring and accountability for the larger vision, and the vision must come from the need, and the vision must come from the people. So while we all as CSRs have to hold ourselves accountable to what? Accountable maybe to our boss, but first to the people who we are spending for. So I'm just putting that out there, that should be the spirit of how CSR is conducted. And if there's any questions or any ways in which, collaboration, doing things jointly together, anyone would like to reach out to me, please do that. Welcome to take it offline. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everyone. I think it's been a useful discussion. So based on what we have seen today, it looks like it's exciting times ahead on the on CSR implementation. So there is ratings which is going to come. It allows for innovation. Governments are thinking about it differently. People are still, there's a lot of worry around compliance, but I think we will grow beyond compliance. But finally, I think all of this needs to result in multiplied impact on the communities. I think that's what really goes towards showing the success of whatever we are doing on CSR. But I think it's been a very good discussion, and thank you each one of you, Jacob, Naghma and Dr. Chatterjee and all the participants here. And if there's anything more, I request you take it one-on-one. Thank you so much.